From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. The United Nations Migration Conference in Morocco is on its second day. Members are discussing the details of the pact signed on Monday. Representatives and UN officials from over 160 countries are attending a plenary meeting to discuss the realities and the opportunities of the Global Compact for Migration. In a landmark agreement, over 160 members signed a pact on safe, orderly and regular migration, despite objection from the United States and a few other countries. This pact is seen as the first international document on managing migration. It lays out 23 objectives to open up legal migration and discourage illegal border crossings. The conference in Marrakech will launch a process of intergovernmental negotiations leading to the adoption of the Global Compact for Migration. As the number of people on the move globally has surged to more than 250 million, countries have bigger responsibilities now, according to the UN. Brazil's future foreign minister announced that the country will leave the UN Global Migration Pact. In a tweet, he said the government of Bolsonaro will leave the Global Pact for Migration, an inadequate instrument to cope with the problem. He said immigration shouldn't be treated as a global issue, but as an accord between the reality and sovereignty of each country. And Chile's foreign ministry has said that the agreement on immigration cooperation is not in line with its internal policies after refusing to sign the UN Pact.
The text discussed at the United Nations clashes with Chile's norms to have a safe, orderly and regular migration. We want to be clear with this. There is a contradiction with our orderly migratory policy, which is regulated and responsible, fundamentally because it doesn't establish with total clarity the distinction between a regular migrant who arrives in our country, instead respecting scrupulously the laws that we have given, and an irregular migrant.
Our correspondent Paola Dragnich in Santiago has more on this story.
It has now been confirmed that Chile won't sign the United Nations Pact on Migration. Chilean President Sebastián Piñera said he rejected the agreement because it goes against the country's internal migration policies. This year, President Piñera has introduced some controversial new regulations targeting migrants. Human rights organizations have criticized him for deporting undocumented migrants in groups, flying them back to Haiti and Colombia, for example. Piñera also said that the pact didn't clearly define which migrants are legal and which are considered illegal. His remarks further confirm the fact that Piñera's government simply doesn't consider migration a human right.
That was Paola Dragnich from Chile. U.S. Border Patrol made 32 arrests on Monday at a demonstration organized by a Quaker group at a border separating San Diego from Tijuana in Mexico. Border Patrol spokesman Theron Francisco said 31 people were arrested for trespassing at Monday's demonstration, and one person was arrested for assaulting an officer. About 300 people participated in the demonstration organized by the American Friends Service Committee. The rally was also a demonstration of support for Central American asylum seekers from the Migrant caravan.
The migration caravan is showing its strength, its power to control what is happening here on the border, because nobody is going to cross. It is impossible to cross here. I don't know why they don't even respect this moment of prayer and faith.
I know it's an act of disobedience to American laws, but hey, someone has to tell them that they're doing things wrong.
Let's hear from our correspondent in Tijuana, Pablo Perez.
Well, we're still at the border between Mexico and the United States in the border state of Baja California. This is the place where 22 days ago most of the migrant caravan arrived after crossing 4,000 kilometers of Mexican soil. Well, they have been stopped here because of the impossibility to cross the border, although the CBP, the California Border Patrol, has reported that during the last few days it has detained over 2,000 Central American migrants that crossed illegally the border, and then they they turned themselves over to the authorities, which is the legal way to ask for refugee or asylum. And well, besides, there is also strong support from Latino organizations in the state of California. And just today, a couple of hours ago, at the borderline in the place called Playas de Tijuana, or the Friendship Park, that's the name on the American side. Well, there was a demonstration by Latino organizations that were pro-migrant and tried to show their support for the Central American and Mexican migrants that try to cross the border every day. That demonstration was stopped, crushed by the CBP and the California police that detained 20 of the demonstrators in a show of force. Let's remember that the Friendship Park has remained closed for several weeks now in order to keep people, North American people, the people living in California, away from the border fence. Now, that doesn't happen in the Mexico side, where the people can walk all over to the fence but not cross to the United States. And well, it's just another kind of show of strength from the United States government that is trying to, well, somehow prevent the Central American migrants that numbers several thousands here in Tijuana to cross. But an interesting number is that the same Border Patrol has declared that in the last month the number of detentions in the border has risen over 60%, and that's not only in California but all the border states of the United States, from Texas to California, which means that it's not only the migrant caravan but the migration from Central America is on the rise for, well, the political and economical reason that we have already mentioned several times on this channel.
That's a very complete report from Pablo Perez in the border. Now to Russia and Venezuela. Two Russian military planes have landed in Venezuela for Air Force training exercises aimed at strengthening its defense capacities. The move comes after a series of meetings in Moscow between President Nicolás Maduro and Russian President Vladimir Putin to build strong bilateral relations. Welcoming around 100 Russian pilots and other personnel, Venezuelan Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez said Venezuela can defend itself when necessary, but added that the country is a maker of peace and not war.
These flight exchanges, which we are going to begin with the Operational Strategic Command of the Army, aim to raise the level of interoperability of the Russian and Venezuelan air defense systems.
Social and political organizations have marched in Paraguay's capital, Asunción, against human rights violations. Demonstrators commemorated the International Day of Human Rights. They condemned human rights violations on indigenous communities, campesinos, and women. Protesters also denounced that social activists are still being persecuted in the country. El Salvador commemorated the 37th anniversary of El Mozote massacre, which saw around 1,000 campesinos killed by the army during the country's civil war. The town of Mozote was mostly neutral at the time of the civil war, when many either supported left-wing guerrillas or the right-wing government. When soldiers arrived in 1981, they soon started interrogating and torturing residents in search of guerrillas. Later, they raped women and girls and killed others. In 2015, remains of the victims were exhumed and delivered to their families. We have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
with developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud, amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
An occasion to enjoy the cultural diversity that defines our South American essence. Come along to find out the story behind these personalities, traditions, and artistic expressions that unite us as a whole. Real Lives. Friday. Only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Social organizations in Argentina warn of mobilization if the state does not solve the housing deficit in the country. Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Sabrina Roth, has a story.
Social organizations have condemned this housing deficit in Argentina, saying 1 million more homes need to be built. Not only demanding the construction of more houses, they also are demanding the state to update the price of construction materials to reflect current inflation in the country. Social organizations met with the housing secretary and made an agreement to update prices this week. However, the organizations have agreed that if there is no response soon, they will take to the streets.
Sabrina Roth from Argentina. A referendum was held this weekend, now in Peru. Our correspondent in Lima, Veronica Insausti, explains the results.
The result of this referendum represents a big slap in the face to the Peruvian political class. More than 85% of the people have voted against immediate re-election of current legislators. There will be no bicameral Congress. The proposal was to create 2 chambers with 130 representatives in one and 50 in another. However, citizens don't want more congressmen. On the other hand, more than 85% of the people said yes to the proposal of supervising the financial of political organizations and parties, especially after the money laundering scandals rocking the main political parties, as with the Popular Force Party, headed by Keiko Fujimori, who was detained after money laundering accusations. Former President Alan Garcia is under investigation, having been linked to similar accusations, as well as other former presidents, Ollanta Humala and Pedro Pablo. All the political parties in Peru have been financed by illicit funds. These 4 reforms, supported by Peruvian citizens, will be sent to Congress to be discussed, and President Vizcarra will call for an extraordinary session next week.
Veronica Insausti from Peru. The second gastronomic festival has been held in Nicaragua's capital, Managua. Let's take a look at its unique food.
2 days of gastronomy, dance, an exhibition of local products, and other cultural elements that have come from countries like Thailand, New Zealand, Spain, Guatemala, and the host country. The event attracted thousands of families, both Nicaraguan and foreign.
We are very happy. People seem very pleased. They are enjoying the variety of flavors. This is an occasion to get together and share.
Flags, music, and a family environment is what this cultural party has to offer. Palestine was also present with more than 80 different dishes, from the well-known shawarma to other prepared foods.
Those of us from Palestine are trying to bring our culture and show it to the whole world. Since we are not allowed in many other places due to the occupation, we are here presenting all kinds of Arab food. Well, not all of it, but a great deal of it.
Officials from the Ministry of Tourism said that this festival seeks to unite countries. Apart from the dishes, different articles from each country and touristic information can be found.
We are dedicating this festive season of peace, of goodwill, as it's Christmas. It ought to be a moment for families to come together, and we want people to come together. That's what is important.
This free event also featured salsa competitions, with prizes related to tourism, with the participation of 25 countries.
Researchers from Brazil's National Museum have recovered more than 1,500 items after the fire which completely destroyed the building back in September. The fire destroyed much of the 20 million item collection inside this 200-year-old museum. The artifacts recovered so far include Brazilian indigenous arrows, a Peruvian vase, and bone fragments belonging to Lucia, a 12,000-year-old skeleton. Germany has announced it will donate over €1 million to restore the museum. A federal court in Brazil has given the green light to a takeover of Embraer, the country's top plane maker, by the U.S. giant Boeing. The $3.8 billion deal between Embraer and Boeing was proposed in July. Last week, a group of lawmakers from the Workers' Party won an injunction to stop the agreement from going forward. A higher court has now overturned that injunction, allowing Boeing to buy 80% of Embraer. Protests have been called across Brazil to demand the release of the former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva from prison. To coincide with the demonstrations, an international conference in defense of democracy is taking place in Sao Paulo. The event brought together leaders of the Workers' Party, including former President Dilma Rousseff, with representatives of other left-wing movements in Latin America and the world. The PT president says she is confident that Lula will be freed by Christmas.
This event is important for Brazil and the world because it shows the affront against Brazilian democracy. Brazilian democracy is suffering for the injustice that President Lula is suffering. That's why we need the national and international media to cover the threats that we see in our democratic system.
The Movement for Social Justice in Trinidad and Tobago declared its solidarity with former Brazilian President Lula as part of the International Conference for the Defense of Democracy.
Today in Brazil and tomorrow, the Workers' Party of Brazil is having a major international conference in defense of democracy, to which conference the MSJ was actually invited to attend. We are, of course, unable to attend at this time, so in addition to sending a solidarity letter to the conference, to the International Relations Director of the Workers' Party of Brazil, Sister Monica Valente, we are here outside the Brazilian embassy because today in Brazil, as part of the conference, there's going to be a major solidarity activity calling once again for the freedom of President Lula, who was being wrongfully imprisoned in Brazil, calling for his freedom, as well as the end to lawfare against other members of the Workers' Party.
Jamaica's government is seeking to buy back its 49% stake in Petro Jam. Prime Minister Andrew Holness spoke on the current situation of the oil refinery.
We have offered to buy back the 49% shares from our friends in Venezuela. Venezuela has always been very good to us. Whether it is the San Andreas Accord or Petrocaribe. The people of Venezuela have always reached out to Jamaica. The basis of that, of course, is that their own liberator and founder, Simón Bolívar, spent some useful time here. So there is a very strong bond between Jamaica and Venezuela. But as it is now, with this transaction between Jamaica and Venezuela, Petrojam in its present state, with the present market conditions, the presence of sanctions, the present geopolitical issues, Petrojam is at risk.
The government of St. Kitts and Nevis is expected to deliver a basket of goodies when it presents its annual budget on Wednesday. Prime Minister Timothy Harris says the Twin Islands economy is at an all-time best. He says public workers will receive a double salary on December 14, and that's for a third consecutive year. Last year, Harris delivered a $191 million budget.
We reiterate our calls for the international.
And for sports, Brazilian football star Marta Vieira da Silva has become the first woman to enter Maracanã Stadium's Hall of Fame. A six-time best world player, Marta's footprints have been placed in the Maracanã's museum to celebrate her achievements. Marta said the award was a victory for every woman, and she hopes that she won't be the only woman to leave her traces there.
To come back to Maracanã Stadium to receive this tribute, remembering the moments when we were here, what women's football experienced, everybody that came with us, it's fantastic. It's something incredible. I'm very happy with this new recognition.
We're taking one last break. Stay with us.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. China has warned Canada of serious consequences if it fails to adequately deal with the detention of the chief financial officer of Huawei. At a press conference, the spokesman for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs demanded a clear explanation as to why Meng Wanzhou was arrested, at the request of the United States. China's Vice Foreign Minister has summoned the ambassadors of Canada and the United States to protest the arrest over alleged violations of U.S. sanctions. On Monday, no decision was made in the bail hearing for Meng. Protests outside of the British Columbian Supreme Court demanded Meng's release, and the hearing is to resume today. She's facing extradition to the United States, accused of helping the Chinese company dodge U.S. sanctions on Iran.
I don't think it's just like a criminal issue or something. I do think there are lots of things behind this problem.
In my opinion, as a mother of all three children, and she faced so many challenges and get locked up in a cell, in a women's cell, that she probably never experienced something like that. It's just such a traumatic experience for her, and I feel really, really bad for her.
A group of 15 activists in the UK have been convicted under counter-terrorism laws for preventing the takeoff of a flight carrying migrants in the middle of the night. The Stansted 15 prevented the deportation of undocumented migrants from Nigeria, Ghana and Sierra Leone, allowing them more time to appeal their legal status. At least one passenger won the appeal and others are still in the process. Mass deportations are part of the UK government's hostile environment policy for migrants. The verdict was condemned by human rights groups. Marches for and against Brexit took place in the UK. This after Prime Minister Theresa May announced she postponed the Brexit vote. Dozens of protesters gathered outside Parliament, waving banners and chanting slogans.
So I think putting the deal, the decision off, is just going to make it worse, because there's going to be further uncertainty, further instability. And we've basically got a weak and rudderless government at the moment, and what we need is some kind of resolution, some way forward.
I think it's a poor show. I think she should crack on with it now. She's promised she'd do it. She's backtracking again. I personally would now like to see the vote go ahead. I'd like to see her lose the vote. I'd like to see her then resign, and I'd like a new leader of the Conservative Party.
French President Emmanuel Macron has promised to raise the minimum wage and speed up tax cuts in response to the yellow vest protests that have rocked the country. Macron said it during a televised address to the nation in a bid to calm down riots. He pledged to cut taxes for pensioners and raise the minimum wage in January. But Macron refused to bring back a wealth tax, saying it would only drive the rich out of the country. It was Macron's first public comments after the fourth consecutive weekend of nationwide anti-government demonstrations.
I'm asking the government and the parliament to do all that's necessary for all of us to have a better quality of life. From the beginning of next year, the minimum wage will increase 100 euros per month from 2019, without this representing extra expenditure from employers. I'm asking all of those employers who can to give a bonus to all their workers for the end of the year. This bonus will not be charged to employees.
The Nobel Peace Prize has been awarded to Iraqi Yazidi activist Nadia Murad and Congolese doctor Denis Mukwege in Oslo. They both call for action to end sexual violence.
It is in the name of the Congolese people that I accept the Nobel Peace Prize. It is to all victims of sexual violence across the world that I dedicate this prize. It is with humility that I come before you to raise the voice of the victims of sexual violence in armed conflicts and the hopes of my compatriots.
100 marathons in 100 days. It sounds tough, but that's a woman's resolution to highlight global water shortage. Mina Guli is running across the world to raise attention on the need of saving water. Her tour began in New York on November 4th and has so far taken her to France, the Vatican, India and Hong Kong. Guli, a former lawyer, also plans to run in Jordan, Kenya and Mexico before returning to New York on February 11th for a final marathon.
We forget that water goes into everything we use, buy and consume every day, whether it's the shoes that you're wearing, the pants, the shirt. Just what you're wearing today, just that outfit, took more water to make than all the water you have drunk in your entire lifetime.
And with that, we come to the end of this news brief, but there's and other stories. You can find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, we are on StarSat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. And we're on social media as well, so go ahead and follow us. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.